Selling a generational family business is a heavy process to lead. It's a time when you get to see the culmination of the value that you've been building for decades, but it's also a moment that you only get one shot at. We're excited today to welcome a guest who's recently gone through the process of selling her family's business and come out the other side with insights and expertise we can all learn from. Plus, Henry will be on to help us figure out what exactly makes a great CEO. All that and more in this episode of Building Unbreakable Brands. Welcome to Building Unbreakable Brands, the podcast where we talk to business leaders with a generational mindset. I'm Meghan Lynch. I'm an advisor to family businesses and founder of 6 Point, a brand strategy agency that helps generational brands honor their past while evolving for the future. Today, my guest is Nicole Myles Brook. Nicole is a multi-passionate entrepreneur, speaker, social enterprise founder, angel investor, and self-proclaimed wearer of heart on sleever. She's been recognized as a top 50 CEO in Atlantic Canada. And welcome, Nicole. So excited to talk to you.
Thank you for inviting me on your show.
I was hoping that we could kind of start our conversation with a little bit of an ending of sorts, because you were very recently leading a company, Big Eric's, and preparing it for investment or acquisition over the course of a few years. And the sale of Big Eric's was actually just completed a few months ago. And I'm just curious now, being on the other side of that transaction, is there anything that you would point to as a secret weapon in building value or resilience in the business to prepare it for some kind of ownership transition?
It's a really good question. I think there are probably many good answers to that question, in that there are probably a number of things that people could do either when they're first starting a business with an exit strategy in mind, or perhaps getting ready to look towards the horizon of an exit or some sort of large transition, even an expansion where you're, maybe deviating from a core offering or diversifying or welcoming new folks to the table who will help lead the company. I think we could have done a lot more to our company. And I think it's one of those things where you could have continued to iterate it forever, waiting for it to be this perfect thing. And I think there is a lot of pressure on either founders or CEOs or board members, whoever is in a leadership position or on a deal team, to try and make it this perfect, presentable, gift offering, so to speak. And what I learned in this process that we just came through is that no company is perfect, and investors or people who are looking to acquire companies do not expect to be buying a perfect package, on a pedestal or under some sort of, display case. And living brands, companies that have a pulse, companies that do iterate over time, companies that have demonstrated their ability to come through various, transitions or economic circumstances or industry challenges. I think that is the thing that they're looking for, and how the company has iterated and how it will have to continue to iterate, because they know that nothing can stay crystallized in one form or another and survive. So I think the thing that I would tell people, and the thing that I'll take forward as lived experience, is to give yourself a little bit more grace, because the chances are, if you're entering a process like the one we went through, or if you're thinking about it on the horizon, you're already probably further ahead than you think you are, because the chances are you have a product that somebody is going to be interested in.
That's really interesting, because I do think that, when you are preparing for that, especially if you're preparing for it over the course of a few years, there is that feeling of like, okay, we've got time, we've got to get everything buttoned up. But I would imagine, almost from an investment standpoint, people want to see some kind of unfinished work to do that helps them say, like, okay, cool, I see where this company is going, and I see a clear place where our team, our skill set, our investment resources can help take it to that next level. So a little bit of that unfinished.
You're 100% right. Yeah, because they're going to be looking for an opportunity to either synergize with it or add it to their portfolio or get additional value that you haven't already created. So if you think about it as, like the analogy of buying a house, like, do they want a fixer upper? Do they want something that's turnkey? If they're buying something turnkey, the chances are they're investing pretty high on the market. And what's that iterative value, that additional increment that they're going to gain? That's what they're going to be looking for. Like, what's the horizon for them? What are their goals and objectives? And I think for every person entering a process like this, depending on who you're trying to attract to the investor table or to the sale table, they're going to have different matrix and answers to what they're looking for. And they're going to have some formula that they might not even ever reveal to you. So stressing over it being perfect, maybe for what, if, unless your investment pool or your buyer pool is like such a specific niche, the chances are it's going to be a little bit more broad and you're going to be casting a little bit wider of a net. So I think you make a really good point. Sometimes people do too much to their business and they don't get that value back. And the value proposition is a whole other piece of the puzzle. Like, what determines the value of the thing that you're trying to sell or gain investment in?
Yeah, you said before too that one of the critical factors that buyers are looking for is resilience, right? Like a sign that this company can go through stress, can go through a tough time, can go through some kind of transition and still come out the other side and have some strength to it. And as you look at your work at Big Eric's and with that team, what do you feel like was a sign of resilience that really kind of told that story to them?
I think for us, the thing that I'm most proud of, and I think the thing that was a bit of the secret sauce, was the culture that we had built. And the culture didn't linchpin on me being in the company or any one person being in the company. And I think that's something that we see as a pitfall for founders or people that have built and run companies. If you haven't built bench strength, if you haven't developed processes and operating procedures and built it like a living organism, if it all hinges on one person or one particular team format, the chances are you've built something that's a little bit more fragile, because the chances that somebody's going to buy it or invest in it and then everything is going to stay exactly as it is, whether it's a team or a particular leader or, an IP that's in place, like if it lynches on one thing, if it has like one kind of fulcrum value proposition, it's going to make it a lot harder for them to see iterating it into the future or driving kind of exponential growth or whatever it is that they're trying to fit it into as part of the equation. And I think before entering in this process, I would have thought that we would have had to have like some particular X factor that none of our competition had, like some particular product or offering or service that was just so special, and that's just really, that could be the format that somebody else is going with. But I think when you've demonstrated that you've built a culture that becomes its own best secret weapon, the culture that iterates itself, the culture where enough people have embodied it that it becomes so synonymous with the brand that you can step away from it and it'll continue. That's what I think we gained attraction for, because there was lots of competitors in the market that could sell exactly what we could sell. We were a sales-based organization, product-based, some services, but mostly, distribution of product. We all know the market is very saturated right now in product distribution. Like, we could have a competitor here in Atlantic Canada. We could have an international competitor. People could be buying some of the things that we sold from Amazon. So there had to be a reason people were choosing to do business with us. And the thing that we focused on and the thing that made us a winning team and the company a winning company was the culture that we had built.
Can you talk a little bit more about what that culture was? Is there a way that you articulated it or talked about it internally or externally?
I think when we started hearing that people were turning down, opportunities to be poached for more money, so-and-so is offering me, I don't know, I'm just making up numbers, $10,000 more a year and but I don't want to go, and it wasn't even about us just matching, this comp level. We understood as well that all of a sudden we did become this real, we like in the region, and I'm using an example that might resonate with some more of your listeners, but it's like we were almost becoming like the Xerox brand, where we were training our people and we were building a culture, and we had such a winning culture and such a winning, our team members had such a winning, inclusive, like roll up your sleeves, help your, I'm in sales, I'm going to help the new person come in because it's so tough and it's such a steep learning curve. And I'm going to buddy up with that person, even though that's not like, a prescribed methodology or prescribed thing in HR or training. But this idea that all of a sudden our competitors and the industry was like, what is it that you guys are doing? Or just, we want your people because we know if we steal them, they will come like fully trained. They will come, so ready to kind of go out there and win. And so it's very easy to kind of get fired up when you feel like people are coming for your people. But in a way, sometimes it can be a sign that you're doing something right, because people want, the environment and the people that you've attracted and the people that you've trained, they want those people because for them, it would be easier and more reliable to plunk them into their organization. But I think the thing that I also realized over time was it's not just that easy. Like, we've hired lots of people over the course of a number of years, and you can hire someone who has had this amazing, legitimate track record and has been amazing elsewhere. But there's so many things and so many pieces of the puzzle that have to jive together for people to work in your organization. And that goes top down, like leadership level down. Like, I think the statistics on successful leadership hires is like 50% failure rate. Like, there's so many things that have to be working, and people have to be fundamentally aligned for it all to go the way that you want to go. Because people do things in organizations. Like, you can build things with technology all you want, and you can build things, that make their lives easier and that build out IP and that make it faster and stronger and better. But there's still going to be people in your organization, and people buy from people. And if people are coming to work and they're not happy and they're not excited and they're not challenged and they're not feisty about going out to win for you, you're not going to be as successful.
You're listening to Building Unbreakable Brands, the podcast all about brand stewardship and crafting an enduring legacy. I'm speaking with Nicole Myles Brook, a passionate entrepreneur, social enterprise founder, and angel investor. Nicole, we're talking a little bit about kind of those critical success factors where you can take somebody who's a successful leader or a successful producer at one company and transplant them into another company and culture, and you just don't necessarily get the same results. I'm curious if there was anything that you learned during that time about what kind of culture and environment your leadership most thrives in. Anything that you learned about yourself during that time?
Oh, I learned so many things. I learned so many things about myself. And I think I mentioned to you before we started recording, I'm still learning kind of in the wake of this, number of years of doing kind of corporate sprint after corporate sprint after corporate sprint, because I took over right after COVID happened and we had to rapidly transform the company. And it was like one big transformation project after another. We did 3 corporate-wide year-long strategies. One was called Phoenix after COVID. And then we had, a project that was focused on stabilizing the business, stabilize, rebuild, retool, and then get ready to grow. So our last project was called Project Elevation. And I think the thing that I learned that works best for me is a culture where people love collaborating and coming up with solutions, and people, surrounding myself with people who are unafraid. And at least if they're afraid, they're willing to show up and try and do things scared. Because I was doing things scared. I did not have this all figured out. I wasn't some sort of expert transformation, pro who had, a litany of prior experience to draw on. I was definitely more of an intuitive leader who was leaning into things that felt like the right thing to do, the right next step. But I asked my team a lot of questions. I asked them what they would do. We talked about a lot of things. We did a lot of scenario building. And even though we were going through a bit of a crisis and we continued to face a lot of challenges throughout our industry and through this process of transforming the company and then ultimately getting it ready for the sale process that we went through, I realized that you could still have a lot of fun doing very, very hard things if you were with the right team and in the right environment. And for me, I think it stems less around the environment because I feel like, again, people really kind of cultivate that. Like to me, a building, that kind of thing is so irrelevant. I think the feeling that you get when you wake up and you're going to go spend 8, 10, 12, 14 hours a day. And certainly the last number of years, it was many, many hours a day and many, many hours a week with the same people. You better find it interesting and exciting, and you better feel like you're supported and you're also supporting people. Otherwise, I think that creates anxiety and much more stress. And we were experiencing a lot of stress, but you knew that you were waking up every day and that you were going to have someone's back and they were having your back, and that you were both, whoever those people were, you were all showing up together, And I think that's what, I'm kind of in this position now of like, how can I find that again? Was that so special that it was kind of a once in a career lifetime opportunity? Like that's how much it felt like, because it took a number of years to move people in and out of positions and to build this executive team and again, work on a culture that felt like we were finally really solidified and we were in this really awesome groove of really knowing each other, putting our egos a little bit more to the side. We weren't in a prove that you're the smartest person in the room. And I mean, we didn't want people who were at our table to be thinking that that was a priority anyways. But I think that's what I reflect most on, was that even in the most stressful times of COVID and wondering if we were going to make it and wondering if we were going to pull through and wondering if all this work was going to be kind of just washed away or if it was going to materialize into anything, was just that we knew we were all getting up, we were all putting in our best, and no one could come at us and say that we didn't try everything that we knew how to, that we didn't look for advice, and that we didn't, no one could have shaken a stick at us and said like, well, if you just tried harder, you would have had a different outcome. And I think there was a certain level of comfort that we were able to generate, that no matter what happened, we knew that we had this special time together and that we had built this really cool thing. And part of the really cool thing that we had built was the team.
A lot of what we talk about on this podcast is this kind of like generational mindset or stewardship mindset that when we're leading companies, we're not doing it kind of for our own ends, but we're doing it to build something that, as you were talking about earlier, can exist without us, can be passed on, can have, a life into the next generation and beyond. And you were leading the company at such like a critical point where not only were you doing transformation work, you were, dealing with kind of the aftermath of COVID, but you were also preparing the company for acquisition or sale or investment. So there really was a sense of like, I'm doing this for somebody else to kind of finish the work that I'm starting. Do you think that affected how you led in that moment?
Yeah, for sure. I think for me, being involved in this company to start always felt like it was going to be bigger than myself, because when I took on the role, I didn't know that we were going to be doing this and this was going to be the outcome. For me, it was, we speak about family business and we speak about legacy and we speak about those things. My folks were the largest shareholders in the company. I couldn't just turn a blind eye and say like, well, somebody else should fix it and good luck to them. I really had such a strong give a shit factor for what was going to happen. And even though, I tell a story of even like being very apprehensive of taking on the role to begin with, because I was very concerned that we get the right person in the seat. I fought with the person that kind of nominated me to be considered. And I fought with the board for a number of months because my biggest concern was that there was going to be the best possible outcome, whatever that outcome was for shareholders. And most of, the largest shareholders were my family. So for me, I felt like I really did, even though we all have egos and they all play into the decisions we make and how we see ourselves and therefore how we lead, for me, right from the very start, I had really dismissed the idea that this was for me and this was me proving myself, or I was going to have some sort of title, or, I was legitimately like, okay, if I can do anything to help, if I can do something that's going to have a legacy, if I can do something that's going to leave this better than the way that I found it, I will put my blood, sweat, and tears into this company. And I don't know what it's going to look like, but I will try my absolute best. And I will pour everything that I have into this. And hopefully that's enough. And I think I also felt a high degree of empathy for the folks who had already been in the business. Like, some of them had been in the business for a number of years before me, and certainly all the people that had come and joined the company over the 78 years that it had existed. And some people had been there like almost their whole career, or a significant chunk of their career. I felt like there was a level of stewardship that I had to take on for the sake of these people that had put their trust in this company, because they were also waking up every day and hustling and putting everything that they had on offer, And I felt like, if we can just harness all of these people who care so much, certainly we'll get someplace, we'll get somewhere, and hopefully it's the place that we want to get to. And so it always felt bigger than me, and it always felt like we were doing it for the future, the what was next.
You're listening to Building Unbreakable Brands, the podcast all about brand stewardship and crafting an enduring legacy. I'm here with Nicole Myles Brook, speaker, entrepreneur, and social enterprise founder. One of Nicole's passions is raising awareness of learning differences, mental health, and neurodiversity in leadership. Nicole, I want to just talk about this concept of mental health and neurodiversity in leadership a little bit. Why is this so important to you?
Well, I'm neurodiverse, so I had an adult diagnosis of ADHD, and it was a really positive diagnosis for me. It like kind of switched on a light bulb, or gave me kind of this missing puzzle piece, and really shone a light on a lot of things that I had struggled with, or just, certain aspects of my life that before I just thought were like interesting quirks about myself, or, why do I always have to be doing everything on hard? Like, where's the easy button? Like, what, you kind of take stock and look at people around you, even throughout school and everything, like all those kind of things. It's like you're looking back on your life, and your life is flashing before your eyes, and you're going like, oh, that's why, all of those things. And I really did a lot of research, as much as I could, when I was first diagnosed, to try and understand what it was, what it was I was just diagnosed with, and what did this mean, and how could I use this information to my benefit and to the benefit of people around me. Because I did feel like for many parts of my life that I was kind of like a burden on people, because I was just different than other people. So I always felt like people were accommodating me, and I didn't like that. Like, I'm a person that wants to be on equal footing with people. I don't want people to feel put out or put off. And so I did so much research. And the thing I kind of realized and was reflecting on over time was like, I kind of thought, oh, I really wish I had known this earlier. But at the same time, access to information is so different now. I don't know if I had learned this when I was growing up or whatever. Like, I had no role models who were neurodiverse. I had no kind of North Star or like picture of what that would look like. And it is what it is, right? Like, you don't know how your life would have been different. You only know what it is, the way that it's all worked out. But the idea that I could help somebody feel less alone, even if it's not neurodiversity that they're dealing with, but just something that makes them feel judged or anxious or othered in some way, or just like that they don't fit in, or there's a level of non-acceptance there. If I could do that by talking about my lived experience, and if that helped anybody feel less alone and feel like they had a role model, or just like could see a path for themselves, then that became my focus, because I think that can be very life-changing. And for me, I'm always trying to tackle one little thing that's going to make somebody else have an easier time, because the world can be very hard and cruel. And I don't think that's going to get easier as time goes on. And it's very interesting. Like my kids kind of think it would be cool to get diagnosed with something like this. And it's not just because of me, like they're having conversations in their classrooms and with their classmates and elsewhere, even just things that they consume online where we still have lots of work to do, but there's so much more of an acceptance for this type of thing than I feel like when I was growing up.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, my son will often reference things coming home, just like conversations that they're having in class or something with another, friend, where he'll talk about they had some anxiety today, so they, went and got help for it and stuff. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we never even used those words growing up. So it's, I think it really bodes well for the next generation, at least that even if there's still work to do, that they're just, they are making progress and have more language and, to your point, more examples of people who, are overcoming challenges or differences and are stories of success and resilience in those places. Because I think it does give you just something to look for, and that North Star that you were talking about. But I'm curious, we were talking a bit about building resilient companies, resilient teams, and I think we often see companies who have diverse leadership teams, diverse teams, up and down the company as being more successful, more resilient. And I'm curious, from your perspective or your lived experience, is there a time when you've seen neurodiversity in leadership, whether it's your own or, within your company, lead to more resilience?
I kind of spoke about things that I was experiencing because I hoped it would also give people a permission slip to speak about things that they were dealing with. We're all unique, wonderfully weird and unique individuals, and we show up as whole people at work. So someone can be an expert in finance or an expert in procurement or an expert in marketing or whatever it is, but they're also, that person who might have anxiety or who might have a family member who has, some sort of mental health challenge or some physical difference. And I think the closer we get to people feeling like showing up as exactly who they are is enough, the more we will see people put their hand up, put their resumes in, apply for jobs, ask for promotions, because the more we can cultivate an environment, even if it's bigger than our own companies, where people feel like I'm okay as whoever I am, showing up to work because I see, that it's worked over here, or I see that I shouldn't be afraid of being that way. And this idea of masking who you are, because I definitely did a lot of masking growing up, trying to contort myself by whatever means necessary into this kind of ideal that I thought I had to fit into in order to be XYZ. In order to be a leader, you have to be blah, blah, blah. Whatever that list is that we all have, that we all think that we're measuring ourselves against. And the industry that I was working in, this company existed in a very traditional, old school, male, pale, stale, across the board. That was very homogenous existence. I was the first female leader of this company in almost 80 years. And across Canada, I was one of very few women leading distribution companies. I might have been the only one in Canada. So I think the more examples that we can give people, regardless of what company or industry or place, the chances are it'll reach more people, and it might inspire a leader to, implement some sort of policy or to speak themselves or to encourage somebody on their team to speak about it. The more people that kind of have that moment of, here's who I am in my truest form, and that creates a ripple. I think, the better off the world will be. Our industry still had a lot of things to do in terms of getting to a place where I could say that they were really focused on diversity and inclusion for so many reasons. And we could spend a whole day talking about that. for me, I was doing again what was intuitive to me, which was, and it's not like it's a decision I made. I just started talking about it because I think I was sick of feeling like I had to hide some aspect of myself. And I already felt like I did not fit the mold of so many things that I was like, well, might as well just embrace this. And what could possibly go wrong? Famous last words. But I just got to the point where my give a shit factor was so strong elsewhere that I had to let this go. Like I had to let being so self-conscious about this slide. I didn't have the attention span and the energy to put up the facade and to mask it anymore. So, and thankfully as a result, I think that it has had positive impacts on me, certainly, and my family and those around me, including in business and elsewhere, like take it to a peer group, take it to a wider business community where we have all these other interactions. I'm trying to show up as the best version of myself, but also the one that's the truest version of myself.
And the other thing that I'm hearing you say there, especially when you're in this situation that requires so much of you, so much energy, so much focus, so much resilience, and just kind of continuing not only to keep yourself going through it, but also to rally the team to continue to move through this time, that trying to mask this other part of yourself or pretend to be somebody that you're not was almost like an energy drain that you couldn't afford. Right? That you had to kind of divert that energy to other things. But then that opened up an opportunity to have more conversations about it, to almost start to embrace it as a superpower versus something that, you were saying before, feeling like people had to kind of accommodate you for it, as opposed to being a strength that you were bringing to the table. Was there any point where you started to feel that shifting of the tide, where you could not only talk about it as, the reality of something that you were living with, but that you were also able to embrace it as a superpower?
Yeah, I think definitely my level of confidence in myself had taken on iterations throughout the number of years that I was leading this company, and ages and stages of your life too, right? Like we don't just exist in the vacuum of what we're doing for a living. So I think I was also coming of age and feeling like better about myself as who I was, and feeling like I am accomplished. And I felt finally like I had to give myself permission. I think too, when you have kids and when you see people that are going to be looking up to you in such a very close environment, it's like, what message does it send to your own offspring if you're saying like who you are and how you're born is like not correct or is not enough, and you have to go out in this world and we have to put on our war paint, we have to dress a certain way, we also have to manipulate our personality, and we have to accommodate the world's view that people should be a certain way in order to feel acceptance and find places that we belong and thrive as humans. So I think there was a lot of reflection, and to your point about bandwidth, there's just certain things that you have to let go of when you absolutely are at kind of like a crossroad of what do I need to get done and what is really most important for what I care about in the scheme of, my decision matrix every day. And there were definitely times where I also felt like I want my team to show up as whole people, and I want them to feel like they can talk about their strengths, weaknesses, things they're nervous about, things that, whatever it is, like we're showing up as whole people. And so, if I show up and demonstrate this is okay, it's like a signal, to people that they take a nod from you and that they can, iterate that. And I think through kind of osmosis, like it just became kind of this environment again that we had created. And that's just who I am at this point in life. And I think another interesting element to all this, and what I've reflected on in the last couple of months, and definitely did not think about this much before, was I already felt like I didn't have the resume and all these things to kind of back up what I was going to be doing. And so I kind of wanted to call people out on like any apprehension that they had. Like, I'd be like, let's air it out. Like, I'm definitely not the expert. I'm not a pro at transformation. I have my fair share of issues. I'm not a perfect person. I come to work every day just like you folks do. And it was like, if I could ease the anxiety of like, people were also definitely, anytime there's a transition in leadership too, it's like, okay, how is this going to go? And people have anxiety. They're like, is my job at stake? Is this leadership structure going to change? What does this mean for me every day? Like, is my boss going to be the same boss? Like, what other changes are coming? And I know that that can be so anxiety inducing. And so I just kind of wanted to like pop the balloon of like, yep, like here I am, like through a wild circumstance of events, like here I am, I'm leading the company. And by the way, I'm neurodiverse and I have anxiety and depression. And you might have noticed that I'm not a pro and we're all just stumbling around here together. And that might have been very comforting for some people and very, uncomfortable for other people. Like, what do you you are a self-proclaimed non-expert, like, have a brain that operates differently than maybe what's neurotypical and like, how's this going to go? But I just thought, what, like, it is what it is. And so like, if we can just like get beyond that, then we can get down to business and get on to what we're really here to do.
You're listening to Building Unbreakable Brands, the podcast for leaders with a generational mindset. My guest is Nicole Myles Brook. Nicole is a student of life and does her best work when she's living through something. She helps others find out what they're best at so that they can focus their skills in the places best suited to them. She never pretends to know everything because she learns every day. We're going to turn the mic over to see what my son Henry can learn from Nicole by asking her some of his questions as the voice of the next generation.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi.
How did you get into this career?
Ooh, that's a very interesting question. I don't think I had much of a plan for getting into the career that I got into. I went to school for a number of years doing a number of different things, and I'll answer very honestly with you because I believe in honesty, but I kind of woke up every day and did work that felt really meaningful to me. And as, the years went on, I just tried to make the next right decision every day. And if people said like, hey, do you want to work on this project? Or, we might have an opportunity over here at this company. Would you consider it? I kind of just thought about it in the time and decided what could I learn from it? What could I add to this role? And would it be fun or would I really not like it? And I tried to make decisions that I felt like were the best decisions at the time. And some of them were easier decisions to make than others, but it's not like I went to school for, dentistry and became a dentist. I had a little bit more of a following of the yellow brick road kind of a way of ending up where I ended up and so far. And I don't know what I'm going to do next. So you'll have to stay tuned.
How do you help other people find out what they're best at?
So I am a person that loves to ask people questions for a few reasons. One reason is I'm just very curious and I like to think about things. So I like to kind of puzzle things out in my mind and I like to know how other people think about things. And so I like to ask very thoughtful questions and listen very carefully to how people respond to those questions. And then I try to kind of what I call provocate, but kind of like not ask them really easy questions all the time, but ask them questions that maybe they haven't been asked before and try to get them to think about things in a different way and maybe make suggestions to them about things that maybe they haven't done before, but I see things that they're good at that I think would really relate to that and see what that does when I ask those questions. Is there anything that you really love about school when you go to school every day?
I feel like my favorite part is like taking a little break from all the learning, going outside, talking with your friends. I also enjoy math a little. It's probably one of my favorite ones at school. And I'm going into a new school and I don't know what to expect really.
And how is that making you feel when you don't know what to expect?
It makes me feel sort of, in a way, like excited, like, ooh, what's this gonna be? But also a little nervous, like, oh wait, I don't know what's going to happen here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, am I gonna like this? Or
yeah. And are there things that you think about when you, so say, just think about the school that you've already been at. Were there things, like you said, you love math? In your math class, were there things that you were really excited? Like if the teacher was like, we're going to work on this today, it'd be like, that would be the, you'd be the most excited if they said that they were going to, as a class, work on a certain type of math problem, or?
well, I mean, I'm not a big fan of school, but it's the best part of the day because there's like a cool down that we do, and it's like a sheet, and you have like whatever we're learning on, and I finish it super quickly, and a lot of people do because it's just one page, nothing else but about 2 or 3 questions, and you just have to hand it in to the teacher, and if you get it right, she'll let you like have independent reading, or there's an app or computers called Lexia Core 5. It's like a learning platform, and you're like at these different levels, and I'm at level 9, and like you go into different parts of the world and like do syllables, and it's word stuff and not math. So,
Cool.
yeah.
That sounds really cool. So you get done this worksheet, this cool down worksheet, and then you get a choice about what you want to do.
Yeah.
Ooh. And how would you feel if the teacher said, like, no more choices? Everything, every day is just whatever I say. Would that feel better or worse?
Worse.
Yeah. See, so there's lots of things that you like to do, but it's kind of like you have to experience them before you can say if you like it or not. And then you kind of think about if it was changed, how that might make you feel. And that's what I like to do with people around me, because I also continue to do that with myself all the time. Like I might say, I love writing, or like 10 years ago, I might have said, I love writing, but now I know I really like writing in a particular way for a particular amount of time. Like if someone said, you have to write a whole book, I might be like, oh, like that's so much work. And how do I get started on a book? And I've never written a book before. But if someone said, I really want you to write a poem, a 1-page poem, I'd be like, yay, that's awesome. I'll write that poem. And everyone's different. So I think when we talk to people and we try different things, like trial and error, we kind of get to know ourselves better and know people around us better too. And if people feel like they can do what they are best at, even if it's for that 1 year or for that, period of time, then I think they'll do their best work and they'll be the happiest that they can be, versus just saying like, you have to do this no matter how you feel about it.
All right, 2 more questions. What do you think you're good at?
I am good at a lot of things, and I'm bad at a lot of things too. I think one of the things that I'm good at, that I love doing, and I think I'll continue to be good at it or maybe get great at, is thinking about things and continuing to try and like work them over in my mind and pick them up and put them back down. So like I might think about a thing and then go like, that's enough thinking on that for a day. And then a week later, I might think on that thing again, or do a little bit more research about something. And I like having conversations about things. So understanding what other people think about the thing that I'm thinking about, and kind of testing my own ideas about it. So I guess I'll give you an example. Like if you were going to make a plan with your friend, like, okay, we're going to build a bonfire because we're going to make s'mores or something. Like you might have always built a bonfire a certain way. Like you might have been taught to like stack up all the sticks, like, and make a triangle. And you might have a friend or a relative or whoever that's like, oh, I always made them like in kind of squares that stacked up like the little cube. And you could kind of talk about the different ways of building a bonfire and see which way is better at burning. And you might still like the stick, stick triangle way, or you might learn that you like the way of making it like a box or some new kind of way, like a hybrid of that. Or like you might say, wait, has anybody ever built a circle campfire? And so it's kind of fun to like think about doing things in a way maybe we haven't thought about doing them before. And other people might also help us get to that place where we're thinking about it in a different way. I'm also really good at talking, Henry. I can talk forever.
All right. Final question. What makes a good CEO?
Ooh, I feel like that's the hardest question you're going to ask me this afternoon. I feel like what makes a really good CEO is someone who knows who they are and isn't afraid to keep learning who they are. Because I feel like people who are like, I'm this way and I'm never going to change, will maybe not change things about companies or change things about how they think about their team or the area that they work in, like the industry that they work in. So I think what makes a really good CEO is someone who isn't afraid to change their mind and who wants to continue to learn who they are, because sometimes CEOs should also leave companies or move on to do other things. And I think it takes someone who's very thoughtful about what they're doing to think about maybe how long they even stay, leading a company. So that is my answer. I think someone who is creative about how they think about themselves and the company that they're leading.
Got it. All right. I'm going to hand you back to Meghan.
Thank you so much. You had excellent questions.
Thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I love him. Oh my God. I know you love him more and you love him, but that is so awesome. I think more people should have kids on podcasts.
Yeah, it's been really fun to hear like what's on his mind and how he thinks about some of these things and the questions that he comes up with. So thank you so much for taking time, being with us, and really being so like open and vulnerable about your experiences and both the successes and struggles that you've had over time. I think it really, creates a story that I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. So really, really appreciate that. If people want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Probably LinkedIn, but on most social media, like if they have a preference, I'm pretty much the only Nicole Myles Brook, but LinkedIn is probably the most professional way. I'm not the most aggressive poster on LinkedIn, like people aren't going to constantly see stuff from me, but I do exist there and I share things when I'm inspired to, or, promoting other people who I think are doing really cool things. A lot of content about women in business as well. And kind of novel concepts, not just from Canada either, but from all over.
That's great. We will connect to that in the show notes. And thanks again, Nicole. So good to talk with you and really appreciate your insights.
It was so great to talk to you, Meghan. Thank you for having me on the show.
I'm sure you all have your own list of great takeaways from Nicole's story. One thing that really resonates with me is this value of culture and building an employer brand and what it can add to the competitive advantages and even the value of a company in a strategic sale. I also love Nicole's personal leadership strategy to just lean into vulnerability and what might be perceived as weaknesses and just show up every day as her full self. Not only did that let her focus her energy on leading change instead of maintaining a facade, but it also gave her team permission to do the same. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to share it, and don't forget to rate us and leave us a review. Thank you so much for listening to Building Unbreakable Brands.